The original Ratchet and Clank is a bit of a mess. I've been a fan of this franchise ever since my tiny little hands were first able to shoot a gun that turned people into sheep, and I've always had a bitter feeling about the original. Like many PS2 platformers, Ratchet and Clank only truly understood what it was about with the second game, leaving the first one in its weird little bubble as a somewhat unique game. And for years, I felt like it was just bad because it didn't have any of the things I loved about the franchise. Well, I was stupid, okay? I'm still stupid, but now I see the majesty that is the original game, and I might be the only one, so sit down and shut up while I tell you what's so great about it. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, Ratchet and Clank is a series about an alien known as a Lombax and his robot buddy who travel the galaxy and save the day. They usually do this with an arsenal of wacky weapons that can do anything from shoot bullets like a normal gun to shooting magical sprinklers that cover your enemies in a rapidly growing topiary. And I'm covering this franchise one game at a time, so it'll be a while before we see that one. Something most of the games have in common is that using your weapons fills up an XP bar that, when full, transforms the weapon and gives it more power and sometimes new functionality. Which is why I didn't like this one before. It doesn't do that. You do have an arsenal of interesting weapons, but they're practically stuck that way. There are special upgrades after certain points in the game, but you just buy those, which already brings up a second major flaw in this game. The economy sucks. Maybe not as bad as real life. I mean, you do make money by killing or destroying anything in your way, which is probably easier than a 9 to 5. Also, it might paint our protagonist in a new light. This guy is stone cold. But it takes forever to save up money for just about anything in this game. Especially if you're impatient like me. I don't have time to scrounge for every single penny that isn't bolted down. That's your joke for this video. If you get it, you get it. But recently I found out that it kind of works. In other games, I always want to buy every weapon as soon as possible because I need to be shooting it in order to upgrade it. That isn't how the original game works, however, and so I can take my time or be picky about my choices. It turns out that a lot of the game's more limited features actually work together if you kind of go with it. The limited money leads you to limited weapon choices, which makes it easier to fill your weapon wheel with only the 8 things you tend to use. It also leads to being smarter with your ammo. I love using weapons like the Pyrocitor or the Tesla Claw, which can defeat enemies without using very much ammo and get a lot back in every crate. Ratchet and Clank has never had amazing gunplay, which is especially obvious if you compare them to games like the modern Doom trilogy. The game softly incentivizes using every weapon until they're upgraded, so you aren't really choosing based on what's going on. That's not at all the case in the original. While I do tend to try and use the Pyrocitor for as much as I can to save money, I found myself swapping to different weapons as they suited me. Pulling out things like the Bomb Glove or Blaster for long range, and even using the Visibomb gun a bit more to take out distant threats. There's a bit more strategy to the gunplay here, especially since your health never upgrades all that much, and you are usually within 5 hits of death, which may seem like a lot, but trust me, it isn't. I still feel a bit of my original opinions towards this game. If you love it now or still hate it, I understand. It can be a bit stiff at times. I think a lot of the uglier parts come from this weird transition for Insomniac because you can still see a bit of Spyro DNA. For example, some of the enemy attack patterns are pretty standard to early 3D platformers. But one opinion of mine that has not changed is that this game has one of the strongest stories in the entire franchise. Ratchet and Clank is often compared to playing a Pixar movie, which is probably just some good buzzword soup, but I can kinda see it. The universe brought to life by this team can be magical at times, and the set pieces in many of the games are visually stunning. But here's the thing about Pixar. They're popular because they make moving stories, not just pretty pictures. And this game has most of the franchise beat in that regard. People love Up Your Arsenal for its refinement of the core gameplay and A Crack in Time for its good story, but nobody ever talks about just how good the story was all the way back in 2002. They remade the original in 2016 and absolutely butchered the story, but considering the vastly improved gameplay, it might still be the better way to play the game. History is being erased, and ultimately, it isn't that big of a deal. I'll still remember. So while it can be a bit tough at times, I do fully recommend trying out this game. I won't spoil anything about the story here, so the ball is in your court. You have the power to let the original Ratchet and Clank story be replaced by the abomination that came out in 2016. I didn't document any of the story here, not a single peep. Aliens who find the remains of our civilization thousands of years from now will see this video and have no idea what's happening. But they'll still subscribe because they should, and so should you.